I'm Larry Fedoruk, and last week I wrapped up my personal journal storytelling podcast series. I Was 8, Stories by Larry Fedoruk. 65 chapters. I wrote these stories over the course of a year, spent about another year and a half rewriting and producing them into a podcast. Including the year I actually was 8. That's about 3.5 years I spent with that kid. Now that it's over, it's almost like he's grown up and leaving home. It's kind of emotional, if that makes sense. Early in the podcast process, a friend of mine wrote to me to say she really was enjoying my love letter to my 8-year-old self. That was the first time I thought about it in those terms. And though it is romantic to think about the podcast that way, I came to believe that the stories were more of a love letter to my father. And yes, my mother too, although at the time of this recording, she is still with us at age 92, whereas my father passed in 1981. My mother and I can and do reminisce all the time. With my father, it's the classic textbook case of things I should have said. Memories we could have shared, conversations we could have had. And by the way, the parents, the folks, don't always come off well in each story, but neither do I. The idea was true stories, the good, the bad, and everything in between. During this podcast, a few strange things happened. At the exact time I was working on the chapter about my uncles Roger and Eddie, my uncle Roger passed at age 81. He was the last surviving sibling of my dad's family, and I managed to reconnect and talk with his wife, my Auntie Maxine. It was great to hear that voice again. I had online contact with the kid who made me kiss a stop sign. That was way back, episode 32. Didn't say precisely why I was contacting him, just said I was saying hello and that I was doing a podcast about our town, and his name came up. I don't know if he listened or not, never mentioned it, and we didn't stay in touch that long. But it was interesting. I just remember at the time I was working on the podcast beginning to wonder, whatever happens to a town bully? I wonder if he's findable. The town bully became a published author, and like me, had long ago moved far away from our old hometown of Waukau, Saskatchewan. During the series, the town itself didn't always show its best side, but again, true stories, good and bad. And to clarify from a previous episode, it was an amazing place to grow up, not just the town, but the area and the province. Don't know that I could ever live there again. It's not home, but it was. I've done the Google Street tour of my old town a few times. It's great to see the buildings that are still there. I was there in the 90s, but not since. Most of the stories pure memory. Also, to clarify details revealed in the series finale, at 8, my worry was that my parents would not stay together. But when I was almost 12, I got a baby brother, and when my dad passed in 1981, they were still married. Of the 100 or so other characters that appeared in the I Was 8 series, the names were changed, except for direct family members, the handful of celebrities that were included, and 3 other people. I won't say which 3 they were. There was a kid in our town called Philip. I didn't really know him that well. In the series, my idiot friend Philip was actually an amalgam of 2 friends that I had, both of whom drove me crazy. Idiots. I'm sure if they did a podcast about their childhood, they would say they had an idiot friend, Larry, and they'd be right. I always loved how, as kids, we could call each other names, have disagreements, and then later, sometimes even minutes later, be friends again. It takes years of maturity to actually learn how to hold a grudge. I've had the joy of creating a podcast, a new audio book, every week for 65 straight weeks. I'm going to take a short break, but only for a couple of weeks, and return with a new podcast. Later that same life. The Further Adventures of Larry Fedoruk. More true stories. You know, people always want to advise you, and they tell you, you know what's hot? Crime podcasts. Those are so hot right now, you should do one of those.
Proceed with caution. 10-4.
I guess I'm not really interested in that, so I was thinking maybe I could do one where, hey, it's a crime what they're charging for lettuce. Hey, that criminal up there running the government. I'm telling you, those banks are robbing you blind. And then I could call it a crime podcast. What do you think of that? Yeah, I'm probably not going to do that. No, later that same life. More true stories, further adventures. I'll let you know through social media when it gets going. Larry Fedoruk on Facebook and Twitter. Or contact me directly. LarryFedoruk37@gmail.com. That's Larry, Fedoruk 37@gmail.com. To wrap it up officially, let's hear from 8-year-old Larry.
So this is weird, because even though it was much later in life, thanks to the series, I became a child star.
That's true.
So now what?
Well, you could embrace the character, continue pretending that you're 8, well into adulthood, and, appear at conventions and stuff.
Yeah?
Or reject it completely, never work again, spiral downward, and end up being shot by police while trying to rob a convenience store for drug money.
Oh, you're so funny. I forgot to laugh.
Seriously, though, why don't you just stick with me? We're a good team. We'll tell stories about being 9 and 15 and 20 and 30. Later that same life.
Yeah, that doesn't sound too bad. You can be a pain in the ass sometimes, but overall, you're not too bad to hang out with.
Ah, gee, thanks.
I've got a few ideas.
Great. Let's talk. Pepsi?
Sure, don't mind if I do. So first, you gotta get some new music. Like new theme music. I like piano and cello. I don't really want to appear on the new podcast. I see my role more as a consulting writer and producer. I think you should also get some new graphics of some sort. And if possible, do something about the
So this one you want smilier?
A little smilier and...
quicker.
Boy, that was a good story. Oh, I was 8, that kind of...
I Was 8 is a weekly storytelling podcast written, produced, and voiced by Larry Fedoruk. Except that part by Becky. She's great.
Yeah, that was so good. Thank you.